Welcome into another exciting edition of Eagles Squad Podcast. That's Louie DiBiase. That's Harry Mays. I'm Mark Farzetta. Jason Martinez might be joining us a little bit later. It's things to take care of. But we got to discuss whether or not Howie Roseman is an actual wizard when it comes to how he moved on Bryce Huff, and Vic Fangio addressing the media today. OTAs continue. A Madden cover in the mix. So much to get into. This is Locked On Eagles Squad Podcast.
Fly, Eagles, fly. It's the Eagles Squad, sponsored by Game Time. Everything Philadelphia Eagles every week, covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the city of brotherly love, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. It's the Eagles Squad show starting now.
Welcome into the show, everybody. This is Locked On Eagles Squad Podcast. It is a joy to be with you guys to discuss all things Eagles, especially during OTA season. Just getting us ready for the regular season, which is going to be here before you know it. Training camp's going to be here before you know it. We got a lot to get into, as I said. But first, before we get into the Bryce Huff news, we got some interesting things trickling in from the Vic Fangio press conference. I just want to give these to the good people here, fellas. Vic Fangio addressing the media saying Jihaad Campbell is working at inside linebacker but won't hit the practice field until August. And how about this? Cooper DeJean, potential starting safety as a base defense. 5 down lineman and nickel. How about that? Blowing our minds a little bit. And then also, this one's unfortunate. Vic Fangio also saying Nakobe Dean won't be back for a, quote, while right now. So those are the things trickling in from the Vic Fangio press conference. Now, gentlemen, I don't know how it is with you guys, but there are certain moments, and we talked about this on the last show. I think I said Bryce Huff is going to be an Eagle through the first week of training camp, and then he's going to get dealt. I forget where we all were on it, but after we did the show, the very next day, I believe it was Friday, I looked at my phone. It came up with the alert, the notification that the Philadelphia Eagles had moved Bryce Huff to the 49ers for a beautiful reunion with Robert Saleh, their born-again defensive coordinator, and he is no longer the Eagles' problem. Harry, your reaction to the wizardry of Howie Roseman?
Well, we'll see if it's wizardry or not, because I was thinking that they would hold on to Bryce Huff until maybe there was an injury, in camp or, through preseason. I would think that they would have wanted to hold on to a guy like that who it was a ballyhooed acquisition in free agency last season, and he had a stinker of a season with very little productivity. We understand that, but I guess he didn't warrant a second chance with Vic Fangio, at least until somebody, blew an ACL out at a similar position of need in the NFL. And I thought they might have been able to do it even better than a 5th-round conditional pick that could convert to a 4th based on whatever he does with Robert Saleh in round 2 with his former defensive coordinator and former head coach, who is a defensive coordinator now back in San Francisco. So that was my initial thoughts on it. I mean, I guess they just wanted to get rid of him. Maybe, who knows? Maybe he wasn't, a good guy to have around in the locker room. Maybe he was a mope. I don't know. So we'll see. But if he was, you definitely don't want that guy, interrupting your culture as you're trying to go out and win another Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting one, especially when you look at the fact that he wasn't a starter in the Super Bowl. I guess the Eagles just wanted to move on faster, sooner rather than later. Louie, I know you've done many takes on this already when it comes to Locked On Eagles YouTube channel in general. Please let the people know of Eagles Squad how you felt about the deal.
Yeah, for me, I think considering the Eagles, it was very obvious both sides wanted to depart from each other. I think Bryce Huff wanted out. I think the Eagles clearly showed their hand for the last year. I mean, Vic Fangio last May at this time last year was saying Huff isn't the player so far that we thought we were getting when we paid him in March. And then, again, he lost snaps in the regular season, got hurt, ended up being a healthy scratch in the Super Bowl. Didn't show up for voluntary OTAs. The fact that they were able to get a pick, I think personally, that could be a 4th rounder, I'll take as a win. Because again, I don't know if the Eagles had much leverage. Also, when you add the fact that they signed Azeez Ojulari in free agency, they signed Joshua Uche, they have Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith. Jihaad Campbell, although he's playing inside linebacker to start, Vic Fangio also said today that he sees the potential there on the edge as well. That's 5 options in front of Huff. So the fact they were able to get potentially a 4th rounder if things go right in San Fran, I think is a win for what was maybe Howie Roseman's worst move since the Jalen Reagor 1st-round pick when it comes to like the biggest investments he's made. Like that was a big investment he made in Bryce Huff last year, and it was a huge L. So the fact they got a pick and some cap relief, I'll take that as a win. But I do think Bryce Huff could still be a good player with the 49ers. I just don't think it was ever going to work in this Fangio defense.
Yeah, if he's asked to do the thing that he does well,
yeah,
and only that thing, I think he'll be okay. But
and I just don't think Fangio would ever ask him to only do that. You know,
look, if a huge red flag didn't go up last year during training camp when Vic Fangio was talking about Bryce Huff like he was an undrafted free agent rookie and not a $51 million acquisition over 3 years, then I don't know what would send that red flag up the pole, because I heard those words from Vic Fangio and I went, he knows this. Like, he spent a lot of money on this guy, right? But to hell with that. Vic Fangio doesn't care. Now, you say some cap relief. What is it now? $27 million worth of cap relief when you talk about Darius Slay. You talk about James Bradbury, because happy post June 1st, by the way, fellas. And also this move with Bryce Huff. Look, people are starting to talk about Trey Hendrickson again. People are starting to talk a little bit more about, the guy that I've been talking about almost every single show now. In a
what's his name?
Simmons, secondary. Yeah. So, Harry, this is a lot of cap relief that Howie Roseman also got, which is another thing you can put as a feather in his cap.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that, he will always be great at that, manipulating the cap and allowing yourself moves for emergency moves, or, just, moves where you're just like, this is an abundance of riches. They go get a guy like Hendrickson. I mean, please.
Yeah, right.
You just, at this point, you just hope he doesn't go to Washington, because there was some rumors there. They've got some money to spend still, and he would fit in nicely with them. He'd fit in nicely anywhere. Really. Yeah. But, he's a wizard with the cap. I will always give you that. We'll see if this trade at this point in time for what they got is more signs of his wizardry as the summer and the season starts and so forth. But, I know how we all sit here now, and I guess he deserves the benefit of the doubt, and maybe that's why we do this. We automatically think that Ojulari and Uche and guys like that, whoever he acquires, is going to turn into, a great player. Remains to be seen. I don't expect much out of a guy like Uche. Ojulari, I could see turning into something of value.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will say the edge rusher group, like, there's a lot of potential, right? Nolan Smith could take another step this year into stardom. Jalix Hunt could break out in year 2. Ojulari's been a solid 6 to 8 sack a year guy if he's healthy. Uche has had a double-digit sack season before, so the ceiling is there. But I don't know if you guys agree. I will say this is like the riskiest group, like the lowest floor they've had on the edge in quite some time. Like, there is no Brandon Graham. You know what you're getting out of this guy. Or even a Josh Sweat or, Hassan Reddick for a couple years. So a lot of this is based on projection at this group, which is rare territory for Howie Roseman. Normally, he doesn't like to play around on the defensive line and take risks, but this is a risky group, and there are some free agents out there. If during the summer, I don't think they'll make a move right now, but if during the summer Uche's not progressing, maybe Hunt's not taking that next step, Ojulari's banged up, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they went out there and targeted like a Zadarius Smith, or I know Jadeveon Clowney's out there, which some Eagles fans don't want to ever hear that because of 2019. But there are some options that maybe they'll consider down the road. I don't think they would do that right now. I do think they want to give this group a chance.
See, that's a really interesting way to put it as far as the lowest floor. Is that what you said, the highest, lowest or highest?
It's got a ceiling, but it's a low floor. Like, it's a risky group, I think. There's no sure thing. You know what you're getting with 3 to 4 guys.
I agree.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the thing that I find really interesting is, again, more to the high ceiling factor. Like, for instance, Azeez Ojulari stays healthy. You're talking about a guy that could very well get a double-digit sack season. Right. And the thing that we could also base this on is you have Jalen Carter in the middle of that defensive line, one of the best defensive tackles out there. Jordan Davis, another thing I'm seeing trickling in here from Vic Fangio addressing the media is that, according to Vic Fangio, Jordan Davis is in the best shape of his career. Well, going into last year, he was supposed to be in the best shape of his career. So maybe this time we can actually we could buy it.
So am I. As am I. As I turned 60, I'm in the best shape.
Harry May's ready to have 5 sacks this year. Let's go.
Exactly. I'm in the best shape since I was 58. Yeah.
250 down the middle of the fairway. You can't tell him nothing. You know what I mean?
Jeez.
So, hey, look, I look at it as a very interesting group when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles defensive end, because there's a lot of potential there. You also have a guy like Jalen Hunt, who I thought showed some potential. Nolan Smith, one of the things I'm trying not to leave out there with Nolan Smith is that you go in, and it's funny because we're going to be talking about these games that wrap around the bye week today in our 2024 Rewind. We're talking about a defensive end, an edge rusher in Nolan Smith that gave you nothing his rookie season, came out, didn't show a lot the first 4 weeks of the season, came back after the bye week, was a totally different player, and then upped his play again after Brandon Graham went down against the Rams in Los Angeles. So I'm expecting him to take off from where he left off a year ago. So, Louie, you talk about some of these defensive ends. I am most optimistic, of course, about Nolan Smith coming back, hopefully healthy right out of the gate, and then also seeing a guy like Jalen Hunt take that next step forward as well.
Yeah, I mean, Nolan Smith, the way he played in the playoffs, he actually set a record for the Eagles, a franchise record for most sacks in one playoff run. Like, he was that good. And there's a lot of pressure on Nolan Smith to continue that rise because, again, there is no guarantee with Jalen Hunt, with Azeez Ojulari, with Joshua Uche. Nolan Smith suddenly is everything to this position, whereas the last couple of years, I don't know if I think they thought maybe Hassan Reddick would be here in the future, or at least one of him, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham. Nolan Smith pretty much became the alpha of this group really quickly. And Brandon Graham even said that on a podcast the other day. Like, he's the veteran. He is the leader of that room, and they need him to continue to be the player he was in the second half of the season, or else they're going to have to maybe look outside the organization to bring somebody in. So, yeah, I mean, Nolan Smith, hopefully you get that player, and he really did break out. Like, he was a stud. By the end of the season and in the Super Bowl and in the playoff run, that was a star pass rusher.
Yeah, Harry, I'm really looking forward to that.
If only things in the NFL were linear and everything just kept going in the same direction, we'd love that because obviously then you could sort of, sit there and pencil in, a number of sacks or, TFLs and pressures and all that kind of thing. And hopefully that is the case. But he is the stud right now on the depth chart at that position without question. The question is, who's the other guy? Who's the other guy that they're going to be able to get in and maybe not be a Nolan Smith in the second half of the year from last year, but a guy that approaches that type of production, because that's really where the question marks lie right now.
You just need at least like a Josh Sweat. I know Josh Sweat, the last time we saw him, was a star in the Super Bowl that could have almost won Super Bowl MVP. But before that, he was a player that led your team in sacks, but he was a solid player. Had some big games, had some quiet games. You need somebody to at least be the 2024 version of Josh Sweat pre-Super Bowl. And I think, between those three options of Hunt, Ojulari, and Uche, one of them should end up being that guy just based on law of averages. But yeah, Harry makes a good point. They have to have at least one other guy that you can bank on 6 to 7 sacks this year, because they lost a lot of bodies there this offseason.
Who was the guy they drafted a few years ago out of Tennessee? Was it Barnett at that position?
Derek Barnett.
Derek Barnett, who had I think he'd broken Reggie White's sack record at Tennessee, and he came in here, first round pick, a lot of expectations, and really just totally disappointed. But the only one thing he was good for was a penalty in a key spot. Where he'd jump off sides or do something stupid. That you could count on. You couldn't count on the production. And it's just a shame that draft pick never really materialized for them at this position.
Yeah, certainly. When you do look at, replacing someone like Josh Sweat, who was good for, 8 to 10 sacks or whatever it was, 10.5 sacks pretty consistently. The thing that you really want to do is still, in my opinion, with a defense that doesn't blitz, is you want to be able to replace the production of an Hassan Reddick. If I could get somebody between Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick, I think then you got a pretty good draft pick, or you got a pretty good free agent acquisition, whether that's Ojulari, which I think is the most likely of the newbies. Yeah, possible, highly possible. And then Uche, I think, is serviceable. I think if we can get serviceable, if we can get a 5.5 sack season for him, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah.
But Jihaad Campbell is going to be the guy that I think most eyes are going to be on, and Nolan Smith when it comes to getting after the quarterback. The question that I have is still, are you looking at Moro Ajomo as the guy to step up and fill Milton Williams' role, or are you looking at Ty Robinson, the draft pick, 4th-round pick, to come in here and help the Eagles out in that regard? So those are the two questions I have really when it comes to the defensive line, is how much can those guys help on the interior to make sure guys on the outside, the edge rushers, are getting home?
I think they're really banking on Ajoma and Jalix Hunt to take that step that Nolan Smith did last year, that Jalen Carter's been taking year after year. Howie Roseman, this is like new territory. In years past, like he wouldn't put everything into these young players and give them this chance. A lot of times he would throw veterans that are proven in front of them. And, I think last year it paid off, but it is risky because these players have little experience and a lot of it's based on projection. But at the same time, you invested in these young players. They did show the flashes last year. You do have to give them the chance to be more. And if not, then they're going to have to look outside the organization. And I do think, again, there are some options out there that are solid. At least they can get a floor of production. So I think we got to let training camp play out first, though, before they make those moves.
Yeah, I'm going with my guy out of Lincoln, Nebraska, and I'm really anxious to see this guy play because if he plays just the way he played the position at Nebraska in the Big Ten, you're going to like what you see. This guy's an animal.
Ty Robinson.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Before we hit our first break, I just want to throw these three things out to you guys because these seem to be the main takeaways from Fangio here. Jordan Davis, best shape of his career. But apparently Fangio wouldn't answer what took so long for Jordan to get in that shape. So,
right.
Harry, I think that's more along your lines of questioning.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
I feel like he's always in great shape in May. The problem is, I want to hear Fangio say that like November 28th, that Jordan Davis is still in the best shape of his life.
Yeah,
I hear that every summer.
I'm so jaded in this town from some of the other teams, i.e. the Sixers, when I hear guys, he's in great shape. What kind of shape's he going to be in December and January when the games really, really matter? Yeah, it's a great point, Louie.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
My thing is always the only time it's never good. There's never a good time to hear I'm in the best shape of my life. It either means you've been lazy in your career or you're done. Because
it's kind of insulting, right? It's kind of a backhanded compliment.
Absolutely. I'll use the term condescending. That's what it sounds like to me. It's condescending. You're either young and fat or you're old and done. That's the only time greatest
I'm
shape
old
of my
and
life
done.
ever.
I'll just say it right now. I'm old and I'm done. Yeah, cooked.
It's like what Brett Favre would say. You know what I mean? I'm done. No? So that's the only time it ever gets said. That's it. Like I just heard, I was just listening to this the other day. Somebody had passed away at 63 years old, and they said, it was a comedian listening to it, and they said, 63. The newscaster said, and he passed away young. He was only 63. And the comedian looks up and goes, I'm 63. This is the only time you're ever called young is when you die. That's not a good thing.
No,
just like it's never a good thing when I have better shape of my life.
No, it's very passive aggressive. Yeah.
Are we saying that that's sort of like the endorsement from the general manager when he's meant to talk about his head coach or his manager? Like, he got the ringing endorsement from the GM. That means you're about to get fired, right?
Stand by him. He makes great decisions. He's doing a great job. Blah, blah. All right. Other takeaway. Nakobe Dean, quote, no time soon. Not expecting him to be practicing anytime soon.
Yeah.
That ain't
not surprising.
Not surprising, is it?
The ballet's not working? What are we doing?
I don't think I was going to say we were talking about the ballet the other day. I don't think it's working out, or it's not at least progressing the healing faster. So I think that's part of why they're using Campbell at inside linebacker too. He's gonna when Campbell plays this regular season, he'll play some on the edge, but I think because Dean will probably miss part of the start of the regular season, Campbell's gonna most likely start on the inside.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd ever see 2 years in a row where I feel good about the Eagles linebacking core, but
isn't that crazy?
By all the praise all the praise that happened last year with Zach Ball, just even going into the season was like, oh wow, this is interesting. A veteran coach like Vic Fangio is this confident. It kind of made you buy into it. I don't know. I only speak for myself. It made me buy into it, and there it was, the opening week against the Packers in São Paulo, Brazil. He looked great.
Right.
So I bought into that, but now I still feel good, even though I haven't seen him play it down at the NFL level, hasn't practiced really either. Jihaad Campbell, for Vic Fangio to be as excited as he was about Jihaad Campbell going to the Eagles in the draft, you saw him walk in the room like it was Christmas morning. It kind of sells you on the idea too. So I still feel good about this, but I don't feel good, unfortunately, that Nakobe Dean is going to look like he's going to miss the beginning of the season.
It's weird to feel better about the Eagles' secondary and linebackers than the defensive line. Like normally it's the opposite, and yet I feel a lot more confident in the second and third level of the defense right now, which is rare territory.
That is rare. But I'll tell you, why else do you feel good about Jihaad Campbell? I mean, he played in the SEC at Alabama. I mean, you just come to realize, like, the guys that play in those schools at that level, you just come automatically, you assume this guy's going to be good. He may not be a superstar, but he's going to be good. And that's what it is for me. And of course, he's excited to be here. And why wouldn't you? I mean, seriously, this is one of the premier places to be. You get drafted at the end of a first round and you end up in Philadelphia, man. You're counting your lucky stars. That's a home run.
It's not, who is it? Who did they take? Marcus Smith?
Right.
What?
Oh,
yeah.
Danny Watkins?
It's like, oh no, proven commodity.
Right.
So
yeah.
I do look forward to that. And then finally, interesting thing here, my takeaway is that they're only testing versatility. Cooper DeJean, he's going to stay in the nickel spot, could play on the outside, could play safety. Here's everything I can throw at Cooper DeJean, okay? I don't know how you guys feel, but he crushed his first position in the NFL. It's a bigger need to have a guy that could cover on the on the outside, bigger need to have somebody that could cover maybe in a safety position. I think they're just going to keep throwing everything at him and seeing what he can't do. And Cooper DeJean is flexible enough, mentally diverse enough to be like, yeah, I'll just play football, whatever you want me to do.
Right.
Like, it's a very easy thing.
I love it. I think if you can start to use him like they used Malcolm Jenkins back in the day, or like Detroit uses Brian Branch, where I think predominantly he will still be a nickel cornerback like Fangio said, but if you can start to move him around the formation as a Swiss Army knife matchup-based player, like if a team has a star tight end and DeJean's on him all day, or, a good pass-catching running back, and you can start to use him in different ways, I like that idea and using him more as a hybrid safety than using him on the boundary at corner. I think he actually projects better in that kind of role. So I think that's actually exciting to hear. And between Harry talking about what Campbell can do and them exploring ideas with DeJean, it's just nice to have like these versatile do-it-all weapons that right now they can kind of experiment with. And I think that's really important. That's how you can evolve this defense, because they haven't always had these kind of versatile weapons in the past.
Yeah, I mean, versatile talents and creative coaching. I mean, it's a wonder what you put those two together, what you can do. And I agree with both of you guys. I think they're going to just try to throw whatever at this guy, because he's one of those guys, if you're a coach, you're like, man, this guy can do so many things. I'd love to try him over here. I'd love to try him there. But you sort of, this is the kind of time of the year to do that kind of stuff too. You start getting into August, you're really preparing for what he's going to be doing week 1 in September. And then now's the time to really flirt with different crazy ideas. Why not?
Yeah.
Want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
Well, let's get nuts. Exactly.
Let's get nuts. Coming up, this isn't nuts. I actually think this is really good. We were just talking about Jihaad Campbell, and I know earlier in the week, Harry, you saw a comparison, for those that don't know, of Jihaad Campbell, and it's someone that got a lot of praise during a brief NFL career. Known big time for how it ended, not really how it went, unfortunately. And how it went was pretty impressive. We'll talk about that when we come back. And this is, we are going to continue our rewind of the 2024 season. We're going to be focusing on weeks 4. That was against Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and week 6, because the Eagles, of course, had the bye week in week 5. So we'll be talking about week 6, their win over the Cleveland Browns. That's when we return. This is Locked On Eagles Squad podcast, back after this. Have you guys heard me talking, or anyone talking about LinkedIn Jobs? If you've heard it, they are all in, because as a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5 o'clock. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn Jobs clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, and you can share it with your network and on your network and get qualified candidates all in one place with LinkedIn Jobs. Post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write a job description, then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip for you. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn Jobs led them to highly qualified candidates. That's LinkedIn Jobs. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms apply. So Jimmy Kempski is a writer for Philly Voice, and I'm a big fan of Jimmy Kempski. I think he does a great job. And he put together an article, Harry, that you saw that gives a very interesting comparison. And I'd say if the Eagles get this level of talent from this type, from Jihaad Campbell, like this type of player, I think their linebacking core and even edge rushing unit will be well on their way.
Yeah, and we're talking obviously about, comps for Jihaad Campbell. Jimmy Kempski's going to be doing this, I guess, for every one of the big draft picks, in the Philly Voice. So it's something to look forward to. He said that he had heard shortly after the draft that Campbell projected to former Chiefs linebacker Derek Johnson. And he said, I like that one, but it's unoriginal, so I decided to pass. And then he considered Keith Bullock with the Titans way back when, but the player he landed on was former Steeler linebacker Ryan Shazier. Now, try to forget about the tragic ending to his career, which was just one of the most unfortunate things that I've witnessed in all my years of watching football. But then when you start to really break it down, he says that, Shazier had significantly better 40 time than Campbell, but the 10-yard splits actually went Campbell's way. And if you look at the strengths that are similar to Campbell, highly productive, disruptive playmaker versus the run and the pass. I don't know about you, but when I see disruptive playmaker, that gets me going. Okay, that's exactly what you want in a player like this. He plays behind the line of scrimmage, slips blocks, strong hands, sheds blocks, knifes gaps, flows very well. He goes through the whole scouting report and then into the weaknesses. But man, I'll tell you what, if it is Shazier, we should go back and look at maybe some highlights of him before his career was shortened, because that guy, he was a Steeler linebacker, of a legendary in the making. At
15th overall pick.
Yeah.
15th
Ohio
overall
State,
pick.
right?
Ohio State. And I don't know, Harry, I don't pay a lot of attention to college football. They're
pretty good.
They're pretty good.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
15th overall pick. I married into a whole gaggle of Ohio State Buckeyes.
Oh, really?
All Ohio all the time. Guardians fans, Cavs fans, pre and post LeBron, all that. Ohio State through and through. My mother and father-in-law, Ohio State graduates, absolutely love Ryan Shazier. But 15th overall pick, two-time Pro Bowler, and albeit a brief career. Mm-hmm. And you talk about all the cliches you could throw at a guy that knows how to cover the field, and great versatility, great mobility, extremely agile. If you're telling me, Louie, that this guy is going to be a model for Jihaad Campbell, I'm even more excited about who the Eagles got at 31, let alone 15.
Yeah, because again, that's a top 15 overall selection. I feel like Jihaad Campbell has that kind of ceiling, that kind of versatility, that multi-skill set that can impact the game in so many ways that you want to just label him as a playmaker. Normally, that kind of player goes in the top 15, especially in the modern day NFL. Shazier would probably go maybe like even higher, because
top
you
10.
You need versatility at linebacker now. You have to be able to cover and disrupt the quarterback and also do more traditional linebacker things against the run. The only reason I think Campbell slipped is because of that injury.
Yeah.
And that's why it was worth the risk. And so I actually have an interesting comp too. So I was doing something on Locked On Eagles last week called GOAT Week, and we were just ranking all-time Eagles. And I was looking at Seth Joyner's stats from the 90s. And this guy, Seth Joyner, had 7 seasons with at least 4 sacks, 5 seasons of at least 3 interceptions, and 6 straight seasons of 100-plus tackles. That's the kind of box score ceiling that you would want in Jihaad Campbell. Those 3 different categories that you can affect the game in. That's what you want. And you hope he can be that kind of player. And, all these comps just show the potential that he has.
Yeah, it's a great name, and without trying to sound like Joe DeCamara, I was on record many times as saying I thought Seth Joyner deserved to be in the Hall of Fame. When you start looking at,
with
the
those
numbers that he
yeah,
put
it's
up on that
unbelievable.
defense he played on, he's in the Hall of Fame.
Agreed.
I agree. And I've been around Seth quite a bit talking about numbers, and when everybody was losing their minds, and rightfully so, about the numbers that Zach Bond was putting up, and I remember there was a stretch of games where he had so many tackles, so many interceptions, forced fumble, sack, whatever. I remember Seth seeing that stat this past year and be like, "Damn, I did that in a game." Like it wasn't just like it wasn't like a grouping of. It was like I did that in like week 7 and like 19 or whatever. And I was like, oh, well, pretty amazing when you have a Hall of Fame career. That's yet to be acknowledged by the Hall of Fame just yet.
Right.
But still, I believe a Hall
Hey,
of
we
Fame
got Eric
career
Allen
probably
in
there.
this year, maybe, hopefully soon, because those numbers are unbelievable, especially for the time. For him to be able to impact the game in so many ways, underrated part of that historic defense.
And I did a weekly show with him during one of the Eagles seasons. Every Monday we'd have him on, and Jason and I, as a matter of fact. And I said it to him, and I said, I'm not saying this because you're in the room and I don't want you to kill me. So I generally believe that about the Hall of Fame. But I wish Jason was on right now because he wanted to kill Jason during one of the Mondays, man. I swear to God, I thought he was going to squash him. I forget what Jason said to get him annoyed.
That is not the kind of guy I'd want to piss off. That's scary.
No,
no
exactly.
chance.
You know, hockey's a better sport than football.
Oh,
anyway,
yeah, right.
you know, Formula One's kind of better than football.
Right.
He's probably telling us. He was probably telling him that he's trying to explain why this third line center is tougher than the modern day linebacker.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Now it's a moment of truth here. How important is Madden football video game? How important is it in your life? Now, I'm saying maybe not right now, but maybe in your life. How important was the video game? John Madden football.
I never played it.
Even
never
right
played
now?
it. I've never played video games.
It,
I'm not kidding you. I grew up with Atari, with Pong and stuff
Well,
like
that's
that.
a
Was
video
so
game.
freaking
That's a video
boring
game.
that we got an Atari set when I was in high school. I think I might have been in 9th or 10th grade, junior high school. And it was so boring, it was shelved within 6 months, and I never went back to video games. It scarred me for the rest of what might be some entertaining stuff. I'm sure some of the stuff looks really good. I never got into it.
I was gonna say, Harry, I
All
can
right, well,
promise you that Michael Vick and Madden 2004 was nothing like the Atari. It
No,
was
I believe
quite
you.
entertaining.
I believe you.
I was going to say it got a
believe
little better after
Yeah.
Atari. They
I'm
made
sure
some
it did.
upgrade. They made some upgrades from
you. Yeah. I had moved on to girls, after that.
See, I didn't for a long time. So, Mark, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. Madden
Okay,
was my
there you go.
entire life. I didn't talk to girls for a long time. Madden was everything to me
See.
on the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3.
Right.
Yeah, I liked the arcadey games like NFL Street more, NFL Blitz, but Madden
NFL
for me
Blitz,
was
yes.
those are my kind of games, but yeah, Madden used to be everything to me.
Okay. See?
Yeah.
This is why we do this exercise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the varying levels of
Right.
interest here.
But is there still a jinx with being on the Madden cover? There was for quite a while, right?
I think that curse has been broken. I don't know when exactly, but it used to be a thing
Yeah.
every single year, including Donovan McNabb, which
Right.
was the last time an Eagle had somebody on the cover, 2006. Somebody was suffering a season-ending injury. They were regressing. So, something bad always happened.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's when they put two guys on the cover, when they put Larry Fitzgerald and Troy Polamalu, but somewhere along the way, I feel like it definitely did get broken. So I'm not nervous about it for Saquon, at least.
All
Yeah.
right.
I'm out on jinxes. I'm going to tell you, when the Phillies won the World Series in 2008, I forgot to do or didn't have time to do any ritualistic thing that I thought would help them win, and they won the World Series in 5 games. So from that point on, I'm like, okay, forget about the lucky socks, forget about the lucky jersey, forget about the lucky meal.
Sitting in
that
the
I have
same
for you.
seat. Yeah.
I feel like when I
Sit in the
stopped my
same seat.
superstitions, they started winning more. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, right. Stop being so superstitious. So when it comes to a jinx, and I know everyone likes to talk about it, I'm out. I don't care. I don't believe in the jinx. It has nothing to do with what Saquon does this year. It's going to have nothing to do with, God forbid, anything bad happens this year. It's got nothing to do with Madden. I look at Saquon Barkley being on the cover of Madden 26, number 26 on Madden 26.
Mhm.
I look at it as nothing but awesome. I find the fact that the Kelly Green jersey
Yeah, it's in
is
Kelly
going to
Green.
be
That's the cool part
There
about
you
it
go.
for me. In
that
2025.
is amazing.
There you go.
Yes. Nothing but good vibes about this. So people right away, they jumped in, oh, what about the curse? I'm like, get out of here with the curse. What are you talking about the curse? You can't kill my vibe on the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, running it back with this offense, and Saquon Barkley is still running the rock behind Jalen Hurts in this offensive line. Like, tell me about a curse. That's going to kill my vibe. Is that what we're worried about right now? Because that's not what I'm worried about. I got bigger question marks when I talk about this team's defense than I do anything revolving around Saquon Barkley and him being in a Kelly Green jersey, no look leaping, backwards lateraling, hurdling, whatever. The Jacksonville Jaguar he did it to. That's only more famous now, and that's what I love about it.
I didn't mean to incite a riot. I was just asking the question about the jinx, okay?
They should have made the Jaguar player.
I'm not trying to ruin your vibe.
The Jaguar player that
we were going to get into
leaped,
it anyway.
They should have made him
next on my list, Harry.
They should have made the Jaguar player that Saquon leaped over have to reenact it with him to get in the uniform all over again and make
Who was
Saquon.
that? Do you remember who it was?
I can't remember the DB that it was. But
I can't remember either. But did you guys see any of the behind the scenes when they took the photo?
Yeah,
because it's not the photo from the game. I mean, they superimposed him back in, and they have a guy dressed up as the Jaguar.
Yeah, they're recreating it.
Mm-hmm. They recreated it, but what they did was they attached Saquon Barkley to cables like he was literally Superman, and they lift him up so he doesn't have to do the – because I mean, you know how it is. They got to take like 20 million photos of it, 20 different takes of it to make sure they have the one that they like, and he had to do it like 20, 30 times, whatever, maybe even more. So they strapped cables to him and lifted him up so he could throw his legs back in the air and leap over the defender yet again. So pretty cool behind-the-scenes stuff there that they let out there. But I love the idea that you have an eagle on it. I see no negative from it, and I look forward to Saquon going on to have another historic season, despite the fact that I'm the one asking, and I think, Harry, you and I have talked about this as well, that we want the passing game to step up a little bit more so Saquon doesn't have to do as much for the upcoming season.
It was Jarian Jones, apparently, was the Jaguars player. Yeah. I don't know if he's still on the squad or what, but that was the guy. Now, here's my question. As a guy who's going to turn 60 at the end of the month and has never played Madden, is it too late to get into it? Or is this something that I would never be able to adjust my thumbs? You know, because you got to be pretty good with the control box, right?
It's hard to play now. I'm not going to lie. Even for me, like Madden has gotten very realistic. It's very technical. Like you have to almost have quarterback IQ when you're throwing the football. You have to throw with anticipation, like diagnose coverage. It's not the arcadey game that it used to be, which that's my style of video game. So I've kind of cooled on Madden over the years, the older I got. If you've never played it before, you're just getting into video games, it might be there is going to be a bigger learning curve than like a 10 to 15 years ago for sure. Like football games have advanced like crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if I have the time to invest.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth it.
I'll say this much. I played like 08 Madden on PS2 for a while.
Who was on the cover?
And then
Vince Young, I think, was on the cover
was it
of
Vince
that
Young?
one. Yeah.
08.
Wow, look at Louie's got them all down, I bet.
Oh, again, Madden was my life for a while.
I think it was Sean Alexander.
Oh, it was?
Sounds right, too.
It might have been Sean
Then the year after that, he had that bad year. That was part of the jinx.
Oh boy. Yeah, right. Oh, I'm sorry I brought it up.
If he was on the cover. And you know, my former partner, Tony Bruno, was the voice of Madden, if you haven't heard this a million times.
I did not know that.
Oh,
I think it was the voice of that Madden.
Yeah, 04, 05, 06, I think. For 3 years he did that. Yeah. And he'd tell you.
I had voice of Madden for 3 years. Yeah. Love Tone. But the interesting thing is, I played that game, whatever, I think it was 08, and then I didn't buy new video games. I'm like, I'm not buying a new video game system. I'm an adult now. I got to be a grown-up. And then my now wife got me a PlayStation 4, and I bought Madden, as one does. And what really blew me away was exactly what you're talking about, Louie. It literally is calling plays, play design. Like kids could go through a full NFL football tutorial on coverages, cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, routes, route trees, formations, everything. It's like you had to like pass the college of football just to play the game.
The days
blew me away.
the days of running the same play over and over again, the play action rollout with Michael Vick, it just doesn't
Right.
it doesn't work anymore. Or the curls like that. I would just run like 3 to 4 plays a game and predetermine who I'm throwing to pre-snap. You can't do that in video games anymore.
So you're saying that the Utes of today can really learn football at a much
you want to
higher
learn
level
football.
by
If you want
playing
your kid
the
to
video
learn
game.
football, play Madden.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, they know. But it was funny that I think it was Grant Calcaterra, one of his first games that he started. I don't think it was Dallas Goedert. One of the first plays the Eagles ran to the tight end, I think it was Calcaterra. They ran a route that you see in Madden all the time, and I couldn't think of the name. I literally went back to the Madden playbook, and I went, oh, that was the stick nod. He ran the stick nod there, and it worked. It worked for the Eagles.
Yeah.
He's on the Saquon Barkley's on the cover. I take no ill effects. I take no jinx about it. I feel pretty damn good about it. And one of the reasons I feel so good is because of the way he played last year. And speaking of last year, gentlemen, we're going to get into our continued coverage of Rewind, 2024 season that was Rewind. When we come back, we're going to talk about week 4, which was, I don't know, can you call it the low point of the season? Because you went into the bye week after that. You lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're going to talk about that game, as well as in our last segment, we're going to talk about the game against the Cleveland Browns. The Eagles were able to pull out the victory and start their 10-game winning streak. That's when we return. This is Locked On Eagles Squad podcast. Back real quick after this. So, guys, go back in your time machines to week 4 of last year. Philadelphia Eagles are coming off their come-from-behind victory over the Saints. Really a game that just was a dud. We talked about it last week. But the Eagles went down to Tampa, the same team that ended their season in the playoffs a year earlier, and they got their tails handed to them by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 33-16. Another Jalen Hurts turnover in that one. Missed tackles by Avonte Maddox, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. There was some jawing back and forth between Quentin Mitchell and Mike Evans, of all people. And Levante David was the one that came in and just took care of business against Jalen Hurts. Harry, looking back on this week 4 matchup against Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what are some things that jump out to you about it?
Well, before I get to that, I got to congratulate you on a very professional transition and tease combo there before going into that short break. That is the stuff they teach you at places like Temple University, the Newhouse School up in Syracuse. I mean, you could do a whole thesis on that. So congrats on that. But as far as this game goes, man, this was the second big loss to Tampa Bay in 9 months. Because they had lost unceremoniously, were bounced out of the playoffs down in Tampa, and they were embarrassed in that game too. So twice against Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield went nuts, had almost 350 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. You talk about the turnovers. Hurts had a fumble loss that made 7 turnovers for him, combined fumbles and interceptions through the first 4 games, something that I remember being very concerned about. As the Eagles went into the bye 2-2. They were down in this game 24-0. Now, I know you had no A.J. Brown and no Devontae Smith, but 24-0 they trailed. And you were like, man, what is happening to them? What is happening to this team? Like, what's the coach? Like, you were starting to think, like, is this guy going to survive? Because the season was heading into the abyss. And it was almost like, before the season started, we all look at the schedule and everything, and we're like, oh, man, week 5 bye, that seems really early. I don't know if I like that, because typically you like it maybe towards the middle or the latter third of the season, so you can get some guys healthy for the playoff run, that kind of thing. This bye turned out to be the best spot for this team because they were headed right into the abyss. And, I know we're going to talk about the game against Cleveland and the start of the 10-game win streak. I'm not going to get ahead of myself. But, man, it was very fortuitous, I think, that bye came in week 5 for this team because they needed it.
Yeah, I think it's funny to look so fondly back at what at the time seemed like one of the darkest days in franchise history. I truly was questioning everything. I thought this era was coming to an end when you combine the 2023 collapse with that loss and how much doubt there was again in Nick Sirianni, in Jalen Hurts. I was questioning if Jalen Hurts was the long-term quarterback moving forward. That bye week, we had a lot of long-term, big picture topics on Locked On Eagles. And for to see where that progressed into a championship and how that moment actually helped them win a title and they were able to overcome that is truly unbelievable. But yeah, that week 5 bye, we all hated it in May, but it was honestly one of the most important weeks, again, in franchise history, because if you don't have that Tampa game and they don't look themselves in the mirror and reevaluate how they're running their offense, they went to the run-dominant scheme after that. They changed from Avonte Maddox to Cooper DeJean after that, and that totally helped the secondary. Without that game, without that bye week, I don't know if we get the results that we do. And it's just crazy to see that now when at the time, I personally wanted a new head coach and a quarterback. Like, that's how I was truly feeling in that moment, even if it was an over-exaggeration. That's how bad that loss felt when you combined it with 2023.
Sounds like a 30 for 30, Louie. They should do one on the Eagles
think they
bye
should.
week of 2024.
Yeah, it's documentary type stuff.
Yes.
I was joking last week when I said we should just do half the show on the bye week itself because so much went on during that bye week. But you talk about big picture things, Louie, and Harry, you mentioned Baker Mayfield carving up the Eagles defense. I mean, yeah, I have been a Jalen Hurts supporter, but going into that bye week, the turnovers are still an issue. He was trying to throw a dart when he was in a phone booth, essentially, with Levante David when he got him with the strip sack. And then the thing that really stuck out to me was after that game where Baker Mayfield was on fire, I think he was getting the football out at a second and a half on average. And you're watching that game, and I remember watching that game a second time because I'll watch the 43-minute condensed game on NFL Game Pass or NFL Plus, whatever it is. And you see him constantly just dropping back balls out. And it's second and a half on average he's getting that ball out. I think it was actually 1.2. And I listened to Vic Fangio's press conference after that, and the question was asked, do you ever ask your defenders to play up at the line of scrimmage if you see a quarterback getting in that kind of rhythm and try to throw it off to where receivers got to get off the line of scrimmage? It's tougher for them to do that. And give a second or two for the defensive lineman to win a battle and edge rusher to win their battle. And he said, Vic Fangio said, I generally leave it up to the defender. He said,
I lost my mind hearing that. I remember at the time. I'm like, excuse me? It's 3rd and 1, and Darius Slay, you're allowing him to play 10 yards off.
Yeah.
I lost my mind when I heard that quote.
It's 3rd and 4, and he's in the end zone? What?
Yeah. Player discretion and for that was crazy to me.
Yeah.
So from that point, I went, because my biggest fear, other than Jalen Hurts, not at all the guy from that season, my biggest fear was that Vic Fangio was taking a cush retirement gig because one of the number one reasons Vic Fangio coached the Eagles is because it was close to his family,
close to where he grew up.
Close to where he grew up, close to his family, close to his mom. And he's like, oh, great, geographically we get Vic Fangio.
Right.
Well, what if this is just the cush last job that he wanted to? I'll get one more paycheck as a defensive coordinator. So it was a concern of mine going into the season. So we go into the bye week after that game against Tampa, and I hear from this defensive mastermind, this defensive genius, that he just, leave it up to you. When you play the line of scrimmage, you play the line of scrimmage. You play back. What's the difference? And I'm like, if the quarterback you're facing is getting rid of the ball that quick, get guys up on the line of scrimmage. It's funny reliving this and literally going back to that same angry place. And I'm like, this guy just wanted to be close to his mom and a basket of chicken wings from the Palladium and get one last retirement.
He just wanted
check.
to be close to the Phillies stadium. He wanted to watch the Phillies and then ride off into the. Yeah, it is crazy. I actually have a screenshot I still laugh at in my phone camera roll of Nolan Smith lining up on Chris Godwin 1-on-1 in man coverage. Like he was lined up like a slot corner from that. I remember being almost out on Vic Fangio too. It's still, again, incredible that team ended up doing what they did, and Fangio turned that defense into the number 1 ranked unit in football and dismantled the dynasty. I mean, it's, again, like Harry said, they got to do a documentary on that. Or
sounds like one.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but I did appreciate Quinyon Mitchell going at it with Evans. That
one
I
of the
kind
rare
of liked.
bright spots of that game.
I really like that. Like this guy's a dog. Like he's got dog in him. And
meanwhile, Avonte Maddox talking to Mike Evans after getting fleeced for like a 50-yard bomb. He's like, "Oh, you still playing video games? You should play tonight after the game." It was infuriating.
Right. They probably exchanged jerseys after the game.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, he wasn't mic'd up much more after that because how about this, Harry, for another lesson in broadcasting? Because after the bye week, They made a change, and we're going to talk about what happened after the bye week coming up. After this is Locked On. This is Locked On Eagles Squad podcast on the Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. So the magic happens during the bye week. Brandon Graham, Big Dom go to Jalen Hurts allegedly. Story later denied. Jalen Hurts all of a sudden has compliments galore for Nick Sirianni as his head coach. They're simpatico now all of a sudden. Cooper DeJean gets put in as your new slot corner. He's healthy and ready to play. And all apparently becomes right with the world, including a 20-12 victory, 20-16 victory over the Cleveland Browns to start a 10-game winning streak. But even that, gentleman, was given a black eye by Nick Sirianni, seen after the game, yelling at fans, unfortunately. The game featured a 40-plus yard touchdown pass by Jalen Hurts to Devontae Smith. The game featured only 47 yards gained on the ground by Saquon Barkley. And the game, of course, featured, like I said, a 20-16 victory. Louie, I'll start with you. When you think back to Week 6 against the Browns, what jumps out to you?
It was such a bizarre game, and this was a game I was in the stadium for, and I wasn't far away from the moment that he was losing his mind. And remember, Nick Sirianni had shaved his head, and we thought he was losing it. And by that point, I was out on Sirianni. I thought they should have fired him after the Tampa Bay game, so I'm not believing in him. And that's the thing, as we look back, that bye week was so important and helped them win a championship, but it didn't instantly turn into results. Like that Cleveland game, they barely won against Deshaun Watson was still the quarterback. That was like the least efficient offense in football. They didn't run the football well with Saquon. Jalen Hurts' numbers looked good, had some beautiful balls to A.J. Brown down the field, but even the offense was inconsistent. They squeaked away with a win, but it just I remember leaving the stadium and being angrier than I was happy. So that was a bizarre day. And I thought Sirianni had just completely lost his mind. I'm like, this guy's on the outs. I mean, the shaved head and then yelling
What was
at
with
fans.
the shaved head? I forgot about that. What was the
I
deal
think
with that?
I don't know what he was
First
trying
off,
to do.
Can I say something as a bald man? He buzzed his head. Okay, he's not one of us. He does not represent the bald community. Never have. Probably never will. He buzzed his head. Okay, let me just stand up for my people.
I remember I did that once when I was doing nights at the Fanatic before it was the Fanatic. I buzzed my head.
You buzzed it?
Yeah. I kind of liked it, actually.
Okay. Well, what? It's
less maintenance.
It's less maintenance. You're right.
That's the one
You're
perk.
Right. Yeah. I remember my takeaway after this game was the fact that, okay, they beat the Browns. They needed a win. Okay, I don't know how big of a win it is, except it was a win when they really needed something. And I didn't, we weren't thinking like, wow, this team looks like they're going to go on a run. There's no way I came away from this win with that, but at least it was a win. And they held them to 4.6 yards per play, which I felt that pretty good about the defense, even though Cleveland's offensive team, it was not a team that really scared you. And they didn't turn the ball over. It was like the first time in a while we could sit there and say, hey, they're clean on turnovers. And they held the defense to less than 5 yards of play. I'll take that. When you start to go back into that game, it was a weird game. One of, Cleveland's touchdowns was a blocked field goal attempt that was returned for a touchdown with seconds remaining in the first half, where you were like, all right, they were up 10-3. All of a sudden it's 10-10 and you're like, Cleveland stinks and it's a tie game at halftime. But then they came up with the big play, the big play to Devontae Smith for the touchdown. A.J. Brown had a 40-yard reception in the second half on a 2nd and 11 at midfield to ice the game. There was a lot of stuff that sort of came together late in that game, and you were like, all right, they got to win. That's basically all it was a W, but they needed one.
Yeah. You know how after a loss, you always hear athletes or coaches say the phrase, there's no moral victories. Every once in a while you'll hear hosts say that as well. There's no moral victories. I agree that there's no such thing as a moral victory. I agree that sometimes there's some positives you could take away, but people will quickly label that a moral victory. I don't believe in moral victories, but I do believe in moral losses. Okay,
Agreed.
Gentlemen? I've said this for a long time. That win over the Browns was a moral loss. A moral loss is when you feel just plain lucky that you actually won a football game and you don't take any real gratification from it. Listening or seeing Nick Sirianni go off on the fans and then seeing him at the press conference with his kids and more than one reporter referenced using his kids as a human shield.
The human shield, yeah.
The human shield. First off, as a man, as a father, if you're Nick Sirianni, I had a big problem with Nick Sirianni's day after press conference where he had to answer questions about the kids. He had to answer questions about what he had to say to the fans. If you're a father and somebody says you use your kids as a human shield, there's no way I am just pushing that aside and not addressing that in my first press conference. That is, who the hell said it? If you said it, to hell with you. I wanted the same fire from Nick Sirianni you saw with him at the fans at some of the reporters that were referencing that. We didn't see that. The second thing was, if you remember during the press conference immediately after the game, he said he called a defense. He didn't call a defense. Vic Fangio was even asked about it later that week, and he said, well, Nick said that he called a defense there, and Vic Fangio's face was like, what? That guy?
Yeah, I think Sirianni was panicking that week. I really
He was
do.
absolutely panicking.
I think he was
so now
losing
I'm
his
supposed to
mind.
believe that this – now, if you would have told me that team was going to go win 9 more games in a row, I would have said you're the craziest person on the planet and had you committed. But
maybe
after that game, they turned it around.
But maybe that's why they turned it around, because that's what Sirianni's good at. Like, that's his superpower, kind of. And I think the team almost rallied around him, losing his mind, even though he wasn't justified in a lot of things that day and the day after. I do think it kind of galvanized the team, even though, again, it wasn't Justin. Mark's right. I left that stadium like that felt like a loss. This team is supposed to be a Super Bowl contender, and they barely beat one of the worst teams in football. But I think it kind of did help. And as Harry alluded to, it did start some of the building blocks of that run. The defense looked great with Cooper DeJean in the slot. They didn't turn the football over, which was a huge issue with Jalen Hurts the first month of the year. So that game did have some important parts of it. But, yeah, at the time, it felt like a huge loss. Moral losses was a great way to phrase it, because it did not feel good at all.
Jeremy Van Sciver on the chat said that Sirianni buzzing his head reminded him of Demi Moore and G.I. Jane.
Careful, Will Smith might be. Or no, is that the right? That's the joke from the Oscars, right?
Jane, yeah. That's the one that got him smacked.
Careful, yeah.
Jeremy, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Let's hit a couple more.
She was still
from the chat
hot,
here.
by the way, with the buzzed head.
She was.
Totally hot. I like the buzzed head on a hot-looking woman.
There was something about it, man. And let me say for the record, when that movie came out, I had a full head of hair. So, but I don't know what it is. Just absolutely, I'm with you. Ted, what's Ted E talking about here? I think Vic Fangio would have to put Coop in at slot the next week if we still didn't have a bye. Oh, yeah, I agree. If Coop didn't have if the Eagles didn't have a bye week in week 5 last year, Cooper DeJean would have been in the slot a week earlier. I agree with that. I like this idea when it comes to how much cap space the Eagles have right now, and I'm very much with this. Izzy, I don't know if that's how you say that. Roll over the cap to use it to extend players like Carter next year.
That's typically what they do.
I think that's the plan.
Yeah.
Trey Hendrickson ain't getting signed.
No.
That's going to be a long-term deal.
Watch out
Justin
if he goes
Simmons,
to Washington.
Yes, I agree. Justin Simmons is still getting signed. That'll be a 1-year deal. That's all. There
you go.
So I'm not too worried about that.
I tell you, the day he gets signed, you got to be in that fan shop the day after buying a jersey.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm going to be on Broad
He's
Street.
got to wear a Justin Simmons jersey the next day on the show.
Absolutely. Yes.
One more from Jeremy here. That game sucked. I think that was the Browns game he was talking about here. I remember walking out of the building thinking we lost. See?
Yep.
Moral loss. Thank you very much. Oh, man. And that's another one. It helped it didn't help that they were facing Deshaun Watson in that game.
Oh yeah, if they faced a competent quarterback in that game, they would have lost.
They lost.
So that's why it felt like Cleveland was the reason the Eagles won. It didn't feel like they won that football game. It just felt like Cleveland lost it. So
you won because the Browns. That's why you won.
Yeah.
That's why you won. By the way, not to bring up a bad subject here for the NFL, but good Lord. Are the NFL going to start giving lessons on how to get a proper massage? Like you can only go to a certain number of people for a massage between Deshaun Watson and Justin Tucker? Because I feel like what are we missing here, fellas? What are we missing? This many people complain about you? Can you watch what the hell
don't
you're
leave
doing?
Robert Kraft off the hook, Mark. I mean, come on, the guy's an owner.
Why not? The NFL did. No, just kidding. This is what are we doing? This should be a very simple thing.
It's the NFL for you sometimes.
Yeah.
Morons, all of them.
Absolutely.
Anyway, gentlemen, another fun-filled Eagles squad podcast. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing to all things Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. Louie DiBiase has you covered each and every day with your Locked On Eagles content right here on the Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. Harry's got you covered for your Locked On Eagles postcast after each and every game. Jason Martinez, of course, on with him. Jason needed the day today, had his radiation treatment, so he's getting all that scheduled. Everything's looking up so far for Jason, so we hope that continues for him, obviously. Thanks to all the support you guys have been giving him. And also, giving this channel as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. That's Louie DiBiase. That's Harry Mays. My name is Mark Farzetta. I'll be back with you guys at noon Thursday. We'll continue our breakdown of the rewind from last year, talking about week 7 and 8 from last year. We'll also react to the rest of the media coverage from OTAs continuing at the NovaCare Complex. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe. All things Locked On Sports. See you guys Thursday at noon.